Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy an Exchange 2016 Edge server. Now, before I get started, I want to take just 1 second and explain what an Edge server is for those who might not be familiar with the concept. As I'm sure you all know, the internet can be a really hostile place. It's filled with malicious software, hackers, and pretty much any kind of threat you can imagine. So that being the case, you really don't want to expose your mailbox server directly to the internet. And thanks to the Edge server, you don't have to. So the Edge server is essentially an Exchange server that sits at the network edge, hence the name, in the demilitarized zone, and acts as a mail proxy. So when messages arrive in your organization, they don't go directly to your mailbox server, they go to the Edge server and then get relayed to a mailbox server. So that way you don't have to expose your mailbox server directly to the internet. Now, one thing that you do need to know about an Edge server is that it's an optional component. There's no rule that says that you have to have an Edge server. If you want to just deploy a single mailbox server and be done with it, you can certainly do that. But an Edge server gives you an added degree of security. Now, one of the things that's really unique about an Edge server is the way that it interacts with the Active Directory. In one of the previous videos, when we set up Exchange Server 2016, I explained that Exchange has a direct dependency on the Active Directory. Well, an Edge server is the big exception to the rule. Because remember, an Edge server's job is to isolate your Exchange organization from the internet. And it wouldn't really accomplish that goal if the Edge server was tied into the Active Directory, because a hacker could potentially compromise the Edge server and use it as a point for exploiting a weakness in the Active Directory. And we don't want that. So here I have a server that is eventually going to become my Edge server. And if I right click on the Start button and go to System, you can see that this server is a member of a work group. And in one of the earlier videos, when I showed you how to deploy Exchange, when we had an Exchange server that was just a member of a work group, we received all kinds of installation errors because of that. We had to join that server to the Active Directory. Well, this server is completely different. We don't join it to the Active Directory. We want it to be part of a work group rather than an Active Directory domain. So having said that, let's go ahead and get started. So there are two things that I have to do before I begin installing Exchange. The first thing I have to do is to install LDAP. So I'm going to open up Server Manager, and I'm going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, and I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to go with the role-based or feature-based installation type, click Next. I'm going to select my local server, click Next, and now arrive at a screen that lists all of the various roles. Here we have Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, or LDAP as it's often referred to. And that's what I'm going to install. And there are some features that have to be installed in order to install LDAP, so I'm going to click Add Features so that all the necessary components are installed. Now the reason why we have to install this component is because remember, this server isn't going to have access to the Active Directory. But it does have to have access to some kind of directory because there's certain information that it's going to need access to in order to do its job. So what's going to happen is we're going to install the Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, and then Exchange is going to replicate the bare minimum directory information required by the Edge server to the Lightweight Directory Services. So that way Edge has the information that it needs, but it doesn't have access to the entire directory. It doesn't expose the entire directory to the outside world. So I'm going to click Next, and we'll click Next again, and Install. And the installation process takes just a moment to complete, so I'm going to pause the video while that installs. Okay, the installation process completed. We can see that the installation succeeded, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now the next thing that we have to do is add a domain suffix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the Start button and go up to System, and I'm going to go over here to Change Settings. Now this is normally where you would go if you wanted to rename the computer or join it to an Active Directory domain. But we're not going to do either of those. So I'm just going to click Change, and we're taken to this screen where we could rename the computer or join a domain. But you'll notice that we have a More button. I'm going to click that, and now we have the opportunity to enter a DNS suffix for the computer. And I want this DNS suffix to match my domain name. So this is the same domain name that I'm using internally. In this case, it's posydemo.com. So I'm going to enter that and click OK and OK, and I'm going to end up having to reboot. So I'll click Close, and I'm going to pause the video while the server reboots, and then we'll come back and install Exchange. Okay, so the server has rebooted, and if I right click on the Start button and go up to System, you can see the effect of that name change. Now the full computer name is e2k16edge.posydemo.com, even though the computer is still a member of a work group. I haven't domain joined it, and yet the name looks like a domain joined system. So that was the effect of what we just did. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and now let's move forward with installing Exchange. So I'm going to open up File Explorer and go to C, and here we have our Exchange Files folder. This is the folder I created with my Exchange installation media, and I'll run Setup. And once again, I'm not going to worry about checking for updates because I already know that I've got the latest updates. So I'll just choose Don't Check for Updates right now and click Next. And there's a file copy process that has to occur, and I'm not going to make you wait for all of these files to copy, so I'm just going to pause the video while the files finish copying. Okay, the file copy process is completed. Now Setup is initializing. And now we're taken into the Exchange Server 2016 setup wizard. And this is going to be very, very similar to what we did when we set up a mailbox server. So I'm going to click Next to bypass the introduction screen. I'm going to accept the terms of the license agreement and click Next. And we're taken back to the recommended settings screen. Now, as you may recall from the previous video, using recommended settings basically means that if you run into an error, Exchange will check online for a solution to that error, and it also means that Exchange will provide usage feedback to Microsoft. If you don't use the recommended settings, then Exchange isn't going to do any of that. Now, I'm not going to use the recommended settings because this is a lab environment, and I don't really think my usage is going to be all that helpful to Microsoft. But in a production environment, feel free to use whichever one of these options you want. Exchange is going to behave in exactly the same way regardless of which option you choose. So I'm going to click Next, and now I'm asked to select which role I want to install. This is going to be an Edge server, so I'm going to choose the Edge Transport role. I'm also going to choose the option to automatically install Windows Server roles and features that are required to install Exchange Server, and I'm going to click Next. Now I'm asked for the installation path. I'm going to go with the defaults and click Next. And now there's a readiness check that has to occur. Now, all of the prerequisites should be in place because I've gone in and set up all of the prerequisites ahead of time. So after just a couple of minutes, we should see a message saying that Exchange is ready to install. Okay, so as predicted, the readiness check has succeeded. We don't have any errors or warnings, so I'm going to click Install to begin the installation process. And this takes a while to complete. You'll notice that we only have 9 steps as opposed to 14 because we're installing the Edge Transport role as opposed to the Mailbox role. But this still takes a little while to complete, so I'm going to pause the video. I'll let Exchange Setup do its thing, and we'll pick it up in just a few minutes to confirm that setup completed successfully. So it looks like setup completed successfully. We have a message, congratulations, setup has finished successfully. To complete the installation of Exchange Server 2016, reboot the computer. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. Now it's worth noting that the Edge server doesn't do anything right now. It can't do anything by itself. We have to create something called an Edge subscription. So in the next video, I'll be showing you how to create an Edge subscription, while at the same time also introducing you to one of the Exchange Server management tools called the Exchange Management Shell.